Okay. Hey, folks. Welcome all to the session on Azure Monitor. Good afternoon. Hope you're all well caffeinated. So I'm going to assume all of you really love troubleshooting issues. And what we are going to tell you today is how you can do that faster and more effectively with all the bunch of exciting announcements we have to make in our observability space. I am Rahul Bagaria. I'm a product manager in our Azure Monitor team.
And I'm Evgeny, also program manager on Azure Monitor.
So let's get started. So on our agenda today, we'll do a quick recap of what are some of the new trends and challenges we have been seeing in the industry. We'll do a quick overview of our monitoring scenarios for those of you who are probably new to the product. But majority of our time we'll be spending today looking at all of our troubleshooting capability and enhancements we have been making. Towards the end, we also want to introduce to you how we are extending observability to the edge when you're running your devices on premises, restricted environments, etc. For any questions, we have our online interactive chat. Please take advantage of that. We have our experts sitting here who will be answering questions on the fly. And after the sessions, we'll be hanging out here as well if you want to chat to us about anything. So let's talk about some of the challenges we are hearing. So over the course of last couple of years, we have been working with a lot of our customers, many of you we have been talking to. There are three core challenges we have really started seeing pop up time and again. As more of you are using these cloud-native technologies, using edge devices, sending these high volumes of data and logs to your log analytics platform, there is immense cost optimization pressure. You need to figure out how to get the best ROI from the data that you are collecting. Then there are security challenges, both in terms of Microsoft providing you a very secure data platform that you can trust your data on, as well as you getting the right security observability, those security practices, so you can protect the data that you are storing, the environments that you are building. And lastly, with all these enhancements and advancements in AI, ML, LLM technologies, how can you most effectively use that in your day-to-day life and just improve efficiency in your troubleshooting? Some of the key trends we are also noticing, and you might be in one or more of these trends. We are seeing more and more customers migrating their workloads from on-premises to the cloud, and they need their observability to continue to function as is, maybe more cost-effectively, in a more modern fashion. More and more customers are going cloud-native as well, using open-source technologies. There is a new platform engineering role being evolved in DevOps. So these engineers providing pre-configured infrastructure, observability solutions, just for efficient functioning. And many of our customers are also running their businesses in a multi-cloud environment, in multiple cloud providers, on-premises, hybrid, et cetera. And all of you need that single pane of glass, that ability to correlate your data sources together. So for these trends and challenges, to address many of these cases, Microsoft provides Azure Monitor as our best-in-class observability solution wherever your resources lie, on the cloud, on the edge, adaptive cloud, et cetera. Monitoring is just there as part of your cloud. So if you're in an Azure environment, monitoring, Azure Monitor is natively out-of-the-box built-in. You can start using it from day one. If you have resources elsewhere, we are going to talk about later in the session how you can get onboarded there as well. But it's a full-stack monitoring solution. So your issues might be coming from anywhere. You have applications, you have infrastructure, you have networking layer. How do you effectively root cause your issues wherever the kind of origin might be? So we collect data from all the stacks, give you those intelligent insights to build upon. We are an open and extensible platform. So any open source technologies you are using, any DevOps, ITOps tools you are using, any of these CNCF, cloud native technologies you are using, Azure Monitor seamlessly connects and collaborates with all of that. So you can use and get the monitoring data in your environment. And lastly, enterprise readiness. And that's kind of one of the core issues of the day. We have made sure that the solution you are getting has all the elements of security, privacy, compliance, governance, all built in, all well documented, so you can get a robust solution on your end. Now, in terms of the scenarios that we support from an observability perspective, First and foremost, our standard application performance monitoring. So we have a feature called Application Insights. Many of you would be aware of that. So you can use that for your application monitoring, failures, performance, usage analytics. We have this feature for many years now. And we are going to talk about some of the enhancements we are doing here. But these applications are running on some sort of infrastructure. It could be a VM. It could be a Kubernetes cluster. You could be using databases, network layer, et cetera. So we have insights for each of those layers and ability for you to correlate issues between them so you can figure out what's going. And for these issues, you can configure alerts, not just your traditional static alerts, but you can use machine learning to configure intelligent, smart, dynamic alerts as well, which can learn your usage patterns and set up your thresholds accordingly. All this data that we are collecting, not just observability data, but your security data, management data, all goes into our centralized log analytics data platform. So that's the data platform for all logs that we are collecting in Azure. And that's the heart of our solution. So you can use our KQL query language to do all sorts of diagnostics, troubleshooting, and so on. And we are going to cover today how we are making it simpler, incorporating Copilot and LLM technologies, so it becomes much more efficient for you. Lastly, in terms of visualizations, we have a bunch of options depending on what your needs are, what tools you are already familiar with. So we have Azure dashboards, workbooks. We recently launched a managed Grafana service. So if you're a cloud-native customer, multi-cloud customer, you already use Grafana, you can use our managed version of that, well integrated with our solutions. Now, we talked about these scenarios. One of the major scenarios that really I want to spend a few minutes on is how we are incorporating AI technology as part of our solution stack. And when I say AI, it's both machine learning as well as large language models. So there are three distinct scenarios we are incorporating these capabilities. There is detection, troubleshooting, and optimizations. Let's look at what capabilities we provide in each of that. Around detection, I already kind of mentioned our dynamic threshold alerts. You can use that ML technology, figure out based on your trends and patterns what are the right thresholds. We have smart detections available in many cases out of the box as well. So even if you don't configure an alert, we can proactively notify you if there is an application issue, data ingestion anomaly, or anything like that. In terms of diagnostics, this is where we have been integrating with Microsoft Copilot for Azure. So say you're running Azure App Services. So we are now providing rich capabilities, diagnostics capabilities as part of Copilot, can help you summarize issues, figure out what's going on, get you visibility into the tools, et cetera. And if you're not a KQL expert, if you don't write queries in your sleep, we can now use Copilot to just give a natural language prompt, and it will generate that KQL query for you. We are starting to do that for AKS logs, going to increase that in more and more resource context. Around optimization, so you're running elastic resources, say VM scale sets. You can use our machine learning technology to predictively, proactively auto-scale your resources based on like predicted patterns. And for you developers out there, if you're building .NET applications, we have code optimizations available. So we can use AI, look at your profiler traces, and give you automatic recommendations and remediations to improve your code performance. And some of you, we have worked with various scenarios where you want to take your data out, send it to, say, Fabric, and run your own machine learning models, build your own models on top of that. So those integration scenarios are also available. So we talked about AI. We talked about lots of these kind of concepts. Let's now drill into using these concepts for an actual set of troubleshooting scenarios. The first one, we are going to look at our cloud-native environments. On to you, Evgeny.
Thank you, Rahul. So last time I was talking to Rahul before the conference, and we kind of did some math. Last time we were up on this stage was about 5 years ago. And at the time, cloud native and Kubernetes were just really starting at their inception, at least as far as the deployments that we were seeing on Azure. So hopefully everyone is ready to catch up on 5 years in about 5 minutes worth of slides. So what do we offer in Azure Monitor when it comes to cloud native? And when we say cloud native, by the way, we're talking explicitly about Kubernetes. It spans also into Azure Functions and other serverless, but Kubernetes is where we're focused today. This is really one of the biggest areas of growth that we have seen across the ecosystem. We have introduced in the last little while a managed offering for Prometheus. For those of you who don't know, Prometheus is a very popular open source ecosystem component that allows you to store time series data, metrics. And so with just a few clicks, you can get up and running, start collecting those metrics, auto-instrumented, and analyzing this. We'll see all of this in a demo in a few minutes too, so don't feel you need to really absorb it here. But we're seeing customers use this for 1 billion time series, even more. This is battle tested, and we certainly encourage everyone to start playing around with this for any Kubernetes-based workload. Also recently added towards what Rahul mentioned with the cost pressures that we're seeing lately is what is called the basic logs tier for log analytics. This really kind of cuts down a little bit on retention rates, on the number of operators that you can use in KQL, but in return saves you a lot of money. It's a much more cost-optimized solution. And as we'll see in a few slides too, we're really enhancing it at Build. That's one of our announcements for log analytics. And so if you need to kind of optimize your costs a little bit when it comes to container logs, which tend to be pretty verbose, using the basic logs tier is a fantastic way for you to do that. As far as instrumentation goes, we talked a little bit, and we'll see it again in the demo, how to configure your infrastructure and a few other layers towards auto-instrumentation. But what about your applications? Previously, for our APM offering, which is Application Insights, you had to go in and you had to install the SDKs, be it our own, or maybe you're using OpenTelemetry, to which, by the way, Microsoft is one of the largest contributors. But regardless, that was kind of a manual process. One of the things that we're launching in Build, and will be available to you in just a week or two here, is the ability to auto-instrument through an extension also your application layer with Application Insights. And so in a week or two, like I said, you'll be able to do this through command line and soon after through UI. It's something we're super excited about. Finally, the last thing we want to talk about is how do you then look at all this data? What do you do with it? And for this, just as Prometheus offers the time series data platform that is really predominant in the OSS world, for visualization, we have Grafana. And again, Azure offers you a managed experience here so that you can go in with just a few clicks, provision an instance of Grafana, automatically connect it to Azure Monitor as a data source, have some out-of-the-box dashboards, or maybe take advantage of the fact that this is indeed an OSS component and use some of the community-provided dashboards and interact with your data that way. And we'll take a look at that in just a minute, too. Let's talk a little bit about some of the announcements explicitly that we're making. First, around network observability, I talked about infrastructure, I talked about application. Network is another really important pivot to monitor. And so we have a bunch of new capabilities here. If you're interested, talk to us after or ask questions, but just know that if you need to monitor your network, we've got some really cool new solutions for you here. Also, as far as your metadata goes, previously, when you needed to query your logs, it used to be a somewhat involved process. You had to go across multiple tables, join data, do all of this. We're introducing a new table called Container Logs v2 that simplifies all of this. It's a single table, and together with this, one of the fields there is a metadata field, so that if you need to slice by a particular, let's say, container name or something like that, all of that is available to you right there. Much simpler queries, much faster queries because everything is contained to a single table. So definitely migrate to the v2 version if you haven't yet. As far as the observability itself, we're now built in various places within the AKS experience as well. Previously, you kind of had to click that Insights button. We're trying to do more and more context-sensitive observability. And so you'll see observability data integrated in more and more places across the various AKS blades. Managed Prometheus visualization for container insights. So we talked a bit about Prometheus and how that's a metrics data store and how we now offer you the integration with that, collecting metrics right into it instead of our logs data platform. We've also completely rewritten our container insights solution to now take advantage for those of you who are using Prometheus to display all of those dashboards based on Prometheus data rather than logs data. So if you are taking advantage of the cost savings of Prometheus, of the potentially faster performance for Prometheus, we now also have all of your experiences that you're used to in Container Insights right then and there. We added a bunch of new recommended alerts from the community. We talked to a lot of you. We explored what the community typically monitors and alerts on when it comes to containers. And we're offering that out of the box. So I'll show you where to find that in just a minute. And finally, we talked a little bit about the auto-instrumentation on the application layer. So another fantastic capability for the languages that you can see there coming online in just a week or two here. So with that, I think let's switch over to the demo and actually take a look at some of these things in action. The very first thing I want to show you is around instrumentation. So if I come in here to my Kubernetes view, if, of course, my computer was to cooperate, here we go, Kubernetes services, and I go ahead and create a new cluster. What you'll see here is that there is a monitoring tab, a dedicated tab to configure all of your monitoring right from within creation time. And this is also available to you if you already have an existing Kubernetes cluster. You just kind of have to go to the right place in the experience. And here you can see that you can enable your logs, you can enable your metrics, you can enable Grafana, all from the same place. And you can select the level of logging, everything that you might want. So super simple experience, right at creation time. You don't have to go back. You don't have to do all the complex instrumentation. Everything's pre-configured right for you. So let's say we created a cluster. We instrumented it. We went through this. We went through the App Insights auto-instrumentation. And now let's say we got an alert saying that, hey, listen, something's wrong with the system. We're seeing some issues. One of the top web pages, it's just not working for customers. So how do we then go about doing that investigation? Well, we'll start in Application Insights. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is our APM offering. So if you need to look at failures, if you need to look at performance, anything like that, this is the place to go. We'll go to failures. That seems to be the logical place to start. And we can see right away in our top exceptions, sure enough, there is a huge spike in out-of-memory exceptions. So let's dig through and take a look at what's happening here. We'll go into our transaction tracing view, and we see that ultimately we're getting these Java out-of-memory exception errors. We can, of course, see our entire call stack here. We can see where the time is being spent. But ultimately, we know that there is something going on with the memory consumption on this application that's leading to issues. So we're going to probably assume that something's going on the infrastructure layer because this app's run for a little while and there haven't been any changes to it. So let's go and take a look at the infrastructure layer. I'm going to be going back to the Azure portal in just a second, but we mentioned Grafana, and everything that I'm about to do here, everything is available for you here from in our out-of-the-box dashboards in Grafana as well. So this was provisioned for me when I configured that Grafana instance, and if I wanted to go and analyze the same thing that I'm about to in the portal, but because I am an OSS native customer and I prefer my OSS tooling, Grafana will do more or less the exact same thing for you where you prefer to do it. But let's go back to the Azure portal here. The thing that I want to start with is to talk about that in-context observability that we saw in the previous slide. So if I go to workloads here, which is a new option in AKS, they've been talking about this through the conference, we can see that there is a particular deployment here that's showing a warning and the memory of which is super high. This isn't actually my app, so I want to go and take a look at what is going on here. And right here, I can see for this particular deployment, my memory is spiking, CPU is spiking. It seems to be in a bad state, and I can drill into the actual pod where this is being hosted and see a bunch of statistics here. I can go and look at my live logs. I'm actually going to switch back to the insights, this full-fledged experience that we have to continue my investigation. Remember how I talked about the fact that we now support all your dashboarding on top of Prometheus instead of log analytics? That's going to be this drop-down right here. You see these dashboards right now are Prometheus-based. I can flip back and forth to log analytics if I want, but because I have the Prometheus data, I'm just going to stay right here. we can flip over to, let's say, containers, take a look at what's going on. And sure enough, this very same oak container, we can see it's really spiking on CPU here. There's a ton of restarts. So I might want to drill in and take a look at what's going on. And what I'm actually going to do is dive right into the logs. I want to analyze the raw logs that are happening here. So I'll press View Logs and Log Analytics. And traditionally, this is where we would come in and we would start writing our KQL queries to really analyze our data. And of course, we can look through all of this. But hey, we've got the Copilot button now. So you can see I've been playing around with this a little bit. And let's give it a prompt here. Show me any errors in my Kubernetes logs over the last, let's say, 24 hours, something like that. And it'll go off. It'll search the entire knowledge base. This has knowledge specifically about KQL queries. It's not just the generic GPT handler. We actually spent the time to do something specific to Kubernetes. And it'll come back and it'll give me a query in just a second here. You can see, OK, yeah, that looks like a great start, and I can run that query. So fantastic option if you want to just get started with KQL and use LLM capabilities for that. But what if I kind of know where my data is? We also now are offering not just KQL mode, but in this drop-down, what we are calling simple mode, which is a graphically driven way to write queries for those who might not be strong with a language or something along those lines. So we'll start by selecting a table. Let's say we want to look at my kube events table here. Right? So now we have the table selected. And if I want to add a filter, I could come in here and say add. I can also do aggregations right in here. I can show and hide columns. And it will write the query for me behind the scenes. So let's say I want to filter this to just let's say the cluster name here. And I can pick one of the existing options. It'll actually show me all the different instances in my logs. I can select that, press apply. And automatically behind the scenes, the KQL is generated for me. I can actually see what that KQL was. And I can switch back and keep writing on top of it. But in this case, I can see that what's likely happening is that this particular oak container is restarting a bunch, getting killed because it's eating up all the memory, and clearly causing a noisy neighbor issue. So in this case, the logs are telling me I need to go and investigate maybe who deployed this oak container or why it's taking up all this memory. But for the purposes of this demo, we'll start on our investigation here. We were able to get to the logs we wanted and see exactly what's happening. So just two more things to show you a little bit outside of the context of that investigation, just because these are super cool features. First, I mentioned that you can now write PromQL queries right against your metrics. So you can see here I have the actual container where those metrics are stored. And I can use either a query builder here as well, or write raw PromQL. This is one of the biggest tasks that we've had around Prometheus metrics. So super excited to be able to showcase this. The last thing I want to show you is, OK, well, maybe you're sitting there and you're watching this demo and thinking, hey, well, what would happen to my system? I'm also using Kubernetes. How would my system react if I had a noisy neighbor eating up memory or RAM or what have you? And for this, I wanted to show you Chaos Studio, which is a fault injection technology that we have in Azure. And so the way I actually triggered memory to be consumed on that particular cluster is through a chaos experiment that you can see here. It's a multi-step test. And one of the steps here happens to be a stress test to eat up 99% of the memory. Right from within the Azure portal, we have integration with a ton of different resources. You can also induce code level faults. So fantastic way to actually experiment with your system and see how it reacts to various faults that might be prevalent. With that, I think I'll want to switch back to Rahul to take you through some other capabilities.
Thanks, Evgeny. So we looked at a cloud-native troubleshooting scenario. Let's change gears and look at your classic scenario. You have your applications running on servers. Maybe you're migrating your applications. Maybe you're in a hybrid environment. So how does the same set of capabilities work in that VM context? But what is that VM context? Just quickly doing a wraparound here. For a typical VM stack, you have a host platform. In case of Azure, that's the Azure VM service, where you run your guest operating system which could be your Windows or Linux server, where you run either a bunch of workloads or your own custom applications that you kind of write and manage on your side. Now, for each of these layers, there are different sets of interconnected tooling available. So anywhere the problem could be originating from, you have the right tools and insights to figure out what's going on. On your host layer, there is Azure Resource Health, Azure Service Health. So if there is something going on with the platform, if the Azure service has an SLI issue, if your VM is down for whatever reason, so you can get those insights. So if your app is not working and your VM was shut down, that's a very clear-cut insight you want immediately before starting any diagnostics. All of the platform metrics are available out of the box, so that's a great place to start. But when you want to do actual diagnostics, you need to collect those perf counters, event logs, sys logs from the guest layer. So we have an Azure Monitor agent that you can deploy on your server, either manually or at scale or using automation, policy, etc. But once that data is available, all of our tooling really gets lighted up. You can use log analytics, etc. There is also a very powerful capability called perf diagnostics that can actually help you look at those traces and give you insights or root cause analysis on why you are seeing such a performance issue. Now, for your workloads and applications, there are a bunch of specialized solutions available. So if you're using SQL, there is Database Watcher. There is Azure Monitor for SAP. If you are migrating from on-premises, you were using SCOM on-premises, there is a new SCOM managed instance, which you can just lift and shift to. There are also some community-supported management packs or monitoring packs available on GitHub. There are some short links out here that you can start trying out. And for applications, as Evgeny was showing on the cloud-native part, same application insights. You have applications running on your VM. There is an App Insights extension. Very easily, you are able to instrument your applications during ops. Now, there are also a bunch of new capabilities when you're doing app and VM monitoring. Code optimizations is one of my favorite capabilities we have been talking about quite heavily. It's a new AI-based capability. So you're writing those .NET applications. It can proactively look at your profiler traces, performance data, and identify cases where you may not be meeting your performance thresholds. It can detect issues in your code, give you recommendations, and if you're using GitHub Copilot, even connect with your VS Code or Visual Studio and kind of lead you to the right next steps. If you're using app services, there is the Copilot diagnostics capability I kind of highlighted in the beginning. You can use that. And for VM diagnostics, we are adding a new mode coming very soon for continuously running perf diagnostics on your VM. So if you're enabling that, it's basically just like a profiler. It runs continuously, collects data every 5 minutes. So if a performance spike happened, say, 1 hour back, you do not miss that. You can capture an insight retrospectively and monitor all of that. So let's see that in action. Let's jump onto my screen. So just like in Evgeny's case, we are going to start from application insights. In my case, basically, I have that Fabricam application that I'm running, and I'm getting some kind of customer frustration and tickets saying the homepage randomly starts loading very, very slowly. It's not a rhyme or rhythm. There is no pattern. Randomly, it starts running slowly. So why is that happening? So we'll quickly breeze through how we can use these tools effectively. Again, starting from App Insights, we can very immediately see, yes, some server response time spikes have been happening, but nothing very much apparent here. So I like to go to Application Map, which is our topology view, which is automatically generated for you, gives you that view, how your application is connected, what components are there, what does the failure rate or bottlenecks, et cetera, look like. Let's expand the timeline a bit. We are seeing the issues happening intermittently. Let's look at last 12 hours. And there are a bunch of reds, bunch of issues happening in the application. My developer needs to look at all of that. But right now, I only care about the homepage issue that I am immediately triaging. So I look at my Fabricam application, and I can immediately see the top failures, the slowest requests, et cetera. And very quickly, you can see the homepage, on an average, is taking 1.5 seconds, not what I want. Let's investigate what's going on. I click on that request, get into the performance view in Application Insights, and I can pick up maybe a long tail where I'm taking lots of time. Some of these requests are even taking 20, 30 seconds. I pick up a sample to investigate further. And the screen I get to, this is our distributed tracing or end-to-end transaction details. Here I can see in that request all the components that were called. This specific case, it was taking time, but none of the dependencies are consuming that time. So there is no particular problem here. There is a profiler capability I can use to drill deeper into the application itself. So if it was taking 1, 2 seconds, whatever, is there some code level issue? So I already have that open just for sake of time. So if I look at a profiler trace, I can see in this immediate case, it gives me a performance tip saying 99% of my time was just spent waiting. Nothing is happening on the app. It's just waiting for resources. So at this stage, I can hypothesize there is nothing wrong with my app. Maybe the infra where I'm running this app, let's figure out what that infra is, might be the root cause of the problem. So when you're on this screen, you can notice or you can look at what your cloud role is, where your application could be running. In this case, I think it's running on a VM. It's called Retail VM01. So I know it's a VM. I can jump onto that. But before I go there, I want to just take this opportunity, quickly show you this code optimization while we are in App Insights. So this is the new AI-based capability where it just looks at your patterns for the last few hours. Let's expand it to last 7 days. And it basically is going to give you certain recommendations with guidance, et cetera. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in 7 days. Do I have anything on last 30 days? Yeah, great. So 5 great recommendations. And if I click on any one of them, it is going to give me next steps or ideas or suggestions how I can improve that further. But yeah, let's get back. Let's go into our diagnostics flow. We knew it was the Retail VM01. I already have that VM searched and opened. Now, how we have improved diagnostics on the VM is rather than you looking at a bunch of different places for your data, just like AKS, we have unified that in a single monitoring tab on your VM overview. So immediately I can see no health event going on, no service outage. So let me look at my guest OS, my VM. Bunch of CPU alerts already being fired. And if I look at the data below, the CPU chart is definitely showing random intermittent spikes. Now, yes, there seems to be some correlation, but before I do deeper diagnostics, I would like to verify that, yes, this is the cause of my application problem. And that's where, again, log analytics helps me do that. I already have a query saved. It's a simple query. All it's doing is taking up my application insights telemetry, joining it with my VM insights telemetry, and just plotting those two charts together. So I run that query, and it shows me that whenever there is a CPU spike on the VM, that's the orange chart, there is an equivalent application response time degradation, very, very highly correlated. This is, so I'm in the right direction. Now, how do I figure out the root cause? That's where the perf diagnostics tooling helps. So how do you get to that? Either you can use diagnose and solve problems on the VM, or you can use the perf diagnostics capability right here in help. Again, I have that opened already. I have already filtered the timeline where I actually saw that spike. And if I click on one of those insights, again, automatically continuously captured, I can see the process that was eating up 95% of my CPU. Very conveniently named CPU load.exe. So I can go to that VM, do whatever with it, and that's my root cause. That's my noisy neighbor. So with this, let's get back to our session. We looked at all of our troubleshooting scenarios, but all of this is really based on that log analytics data platform. A bunch of improvements and enhancements there. Let's quickly go over that.
Yeah, so I'll take you pretty quickly here through the what's new and interesting in log analytics. First of all, for those of you who have been with Azure Monitor for a while, towards that cost optimization concern, you know that the vast majority of the charges associated with Azure Monitor come from log analytics. We really charge you on the data ingested, and then everything else is kind of included. And so we wanted to talk to you about a few different ways to optimize costs and to really get some data efficiency out of your system. First, on the right-hand side there under Store and Query, we wanted to tell you about the different tiers of logs that you can have for various data types. Analytics logs is really the one that you're all used to. This is the full capabilities of the system. If you want to use every single operator available to you, you want to have 30 days retention up to 2 years, an unlimited number of queries, everything included, that's the analytics logs tier. But if you don't need all of that power, if maybe you're not running machine learning queries each and every single time, if maybe you're okay having a slightly reduced function set, but want to gain some cost benefits from that, we have basic logs available for you to solve that. And containers, by the way, is a perfect use case for that. We're seeing custom logs be another place where we're seeing a lot of adoption, so certainly worth a look. Finally, we have archival logs, which is a long-term archival option for up to 12 years of retention. And this is more if you, let's say, at some point need to come back and have some security data available. Or maybe you have some regulation that you're subject to, and you need to store the data in case an auditor comes along and says, hey, I need to see the last 7 years of everything you've been doing. And so for that, we have the archive logs. And this is basically just commodity storage, super cheap, but you can just kind of offload data, have it age out into this layer automatically. You can warm it back up. You can run what are called search jobs. Really, really cool option. And then on the ingestion side, we have what are called data collection transformations, which is a way for you on each and every single event coming into the system to apply a transformation, be it a filter saying, hey, I want data from just this set of machines. Or maybe you want to strip out a particular column because it's very verbose, right? Maybe you want to take some data and fork it off. If it's some highly valuable machine the data is coming from, you want to send it to an analytics tier. And then for less valuable machines, you want to send it to a basic tier. You can do all of that with ingestion time transformations. And then there's a couple of other techniques available for you there. You can set caps on daily ingestion, and you can also apply sampling in a bunch of places in the system. So if you're curious about any more of these, come talk to us afterwards or ask a question online, and we'll be happy to go through that with you. As with the other areas, there's a bunch of new things that we're announcing here in Build, and I want to go through that with you. Simple mode you saw. This is the way to have your UI drive your query creation rather than explicitly writing KQL. We've already been seeing a huge adoption of this. People are incredibly excited about not always having to go to KQL, even though a lot of people do love our KQL. It's another fantastic option for those who don't need to write complex queries. Workspace replication is a true enterprise-grade BCDR solution. Previously, we've had availability zones for you. You could have sent data to multiple workspaces, but if you want a true out-of-the-box BCDR solution, take a look at workspace replication. Summary rules are an ability for you to, every day, every hour, or even more frequently, run a particular query and get the summary results, save those into a separate table. And this is super useful for things like, for example, dashboarding, where you might not want to run the same complex query every single time that dashboard loads. You actually want to pre-calculate the data and then run your dashboard off of that. We talked about enhanced basic logs. Retention is now 30 days for everyone on basic logs. And we also now support more operators than ever, including things like summarizes and lookups. So definitely give basic logs a shot if it was previously too restrictive for you. Finally, for dedicated clusters, first of all, we're lowering the minimum bar to only 100 gigs a day to take advantage of a dedicated cluster. And we're also delivering a great new admin UI, whereas previously you've had to interact through the API through ARM calls. There's a bunch of new metrics around the workspace, around things like ingestion volume, latency, query success rates. And so that's a great capability just to do some good housekeeping about the health of your data. Finally, we have a new set of policies in Azure Policy that automatically enable data collection across all of your diagnostic setting options. So over 130 different resources where you can come in, you can enable this policy and automatically have the data collection, I should say, be enabled for you. So you don't have to worry about gaps in your data or anything along those lines. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the edge.
Great. So we have been talking about Azure and cloud. Let's go to the edge. Now, as I mentioned, as a major trend we are seeing in the beginning, a lot of our customers are running their stuff not just on Azure, but across clouds, across on-premises. And we have a capability to kind of improve that functionality with Azure Arc. So you can Arc enable your servers, your Kubernetes cluster, whether they are in a third-party cloud provider, whether they are running on-premises. But once your resource is Arc-enabled, you can use all of the Azure Monitor functionalities that we have talked about so far, just like any other native Azure service. That just makes it easy for you to kind of use your multi-cloud environment, get a single pane of glass, be able to correlate and troubleshoot across different clouds, so you're not stuck in an isolated environment. Not just multi-cloud, but there are scenarios around edge observability as well. Now, typically, how data collection into Azure Monitor functions is we have a standard cloud pipeline where all the data flows into Azure Monitor using the agents or SDKs that you might be running either on Azure or on-premises. Now, the cloud pipeline is automatically available. You don't need to do any configuration. All you need to do is set up data collection rules, which says, here is my data source, here is my schema, any optional transformations I need to do, where does my data go, which workspace, which account, etc. Those configurations I do, but once data is in Azure Monitor, I can use KQL, PromQL, all of these insights functionalities we covered. But this is for your regular environment, your regular Azure on-premises environment with good cloud connectivity. There are cases where you are in a restricted environment. You are in an edge environment, you have IT/OT devices, intermittent connectivity, etc. So we are extending this cloud pipeline, adding a new edge pipeline component, which we are calling Azure Monitor Pipeline, which basically extend the data collection, gives you a highly scalable, highly efficient model to get data from your edge resources straight into Azure Monitor. Basically, this is an OpenTelemetry collector-powered engine. You need a Kubernetes cluster in your edge environment. You Arc-enable that cluster. We have a new extension called Azure Monitor Pipeline. You enable that, and just like with the cloud pipeline, you kind of define your OTLP logs or your sys logs, whatever you want to collect from on-prem and edge, and get it into Azure Monitor. Now, what are some of the core popular real-life scenarios that this might be useful for you? And there are various categories of customers we have worked in the last 1 year. So some of the popular scenarios I'm going to highlight for you. One case is where companies have these high volume of IT/OT devices running across their environment, which generates millions of events per second. So Azure Monitor Pipeline is a great way to do that high-scale data ingestion. Essentially, you can create multiple replica sets for your Azure Monitor Pipeline and horizontally scale to as much data collection capability that you need. Secondly, especially in a manufacturing construct, when you're running your environment in an isolated network, maybe like ISA 95 or Purdue networks, etc., where there might be restricted connectivity to the cloud, now you can use Azure Monitor Pipeline along with the Azure IoT layered network management to kind of connect your pipeline data, your data collection, straight into the cloud pipeline for Azure Monitor. So makes it easy for you to go through those segmented layers of the network and get the data out to the cloud where you really need to process that. Lastly, and again, this scenario we see more in that logistics, shipping kind of an environment where you might have intermittent connectivity. You might not be able to connect to cloud for 5 minutes, for half an hour, for a day, for multiple days. So what do you do with the data? So the pipeline now has buffering and caching capabilities. So for whatever amount of time, reasonable amount of time, you are out of cloud connectivity, we can store the data. Once you are back up, all your data goes back in, so you can start processing whenever you are able to connect to internet. So that's the new pipeline. It's in preview. Check it out. We are going to add more and more capabilities, add more and more scenarios, supporting AKS, supporting servers, etc. So really excited for you folks to try this out. Now, how do you get to learn more about this? So we have a bunch of additional resources, training modules, best practices, documentation, etc. We have collected all of that in a build collection. The short link is aka.ms build 24 collection Azure Monitor. Check that out. Really great sets of resources. We have training modules, etc. available as well. And the same link you'll find in your session details in the build page as well. So do look at that. And with that, I think That's all we had today. We are going to look at the questions. We are going to hang out here. Anything we can help you answer, any curiosities you have, would love to chat with you.
Thank you for
all.
coming out.